Hello, my name is Sandra Baker. Thank you for coming to my presentation on the physiology of grief. So, what is grief? We often use the term grief to describe the emotional processes that we go through when experiencing the loss of a loved one. Merriam-Webster defines grief as a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement, a cause of such sufferings. The term grief may also be used to describe irritating, bothersome, or unfortunate happenings. There are a few different types of grief. Anticipatory grief, which is the grief that we experience when we know that the loss of someone we love is near, happens in cases of dementia or like when someone we love is on hospice. Common grief is what most of us are familiar with. This process involves an emotional response to the loss over time. The loss is accepted, and though the love and weight of the loss is still felt, the death and grief have generally been accepted. There's 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, but commonly associated with common grief. And here we have the death of my small, sweet little parakeet, Abigail. And I thought that, my grief with her is a form of common grief. There's also complicated grief, which is inhibited grief, when one shows little to no signs of grief. Delayed grief, where one experiences grief at a period significantly later than expected. Chronic grief, where one experiences grief significantly longer than expected. Or distorted grief, where one shows extreme or bizarre grief reactions. So, how does grief impact us on a psychological level? Well, it causes lots of stress. Our bodies react to changes in our environment with stress. The sympathetic adrenomedullary region, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal region, and our central nervous system in general are stimulated by stress. As a result, epinephrine and non-epinephrine are released, leading to cardiovascular response. Grief has the power to put us into fight or flight. Grief also hurts our heart. With the increased stress, parasympathetic systems decrease in function. Those experiencing grief are more likely to experience heart rate variability, increased blood pressure, and dysregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, as well as increased cortisol levels. All of the imbalances inhibits our body's ability to function at our highest capacity. Grief also impacts our immunity. Grief has a tendency to turn our world upside down. We don't eat well, we don't sleep well, and as a result, we forget to exercise. All our self-care goes out the window. Chronic secretion of cortisol during grief impairs the body's ability to kill off natural pathogens. All of these combined factors lead to a reduced immunity during the periods of grief. And down here below, I've got a photo of me holding my grandmom's hand as she was dying in the hospital battling COVID, and a photo from the place where we buried her. So there's a few different treatment options for grief. Naloxone is used primarily in opioid users to block dopamine receptors, which inhibits the release of dopamine. Dopamine is released when we experience positive social interactions with those we love and build positive relationships. By using naltrexone, we inhibit dopamine production during social interactions, thereby reducing positive feelings. Though this seems counterintuitive, reducing the dependence grieving people have on social interactions may make the loss of a loved one feel less heavy. Additionally, this treatment may be beneficial to anyone struggling with drug dependency during the grieving process. Though this seems counterintuitive, reducing the dependence really may help the loss feel a lot less heavy. There's also selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. SSRIs increase levels of serotonin in our bodies by blocking reuptake. This means that as opposed to being reabsorbed, more serotonin is available for our bodies to use. Commonly used to treat depression, SSRIs can be a great option for those experiencing chronic grief as well. So what can we do to reduce these impacts? We can avoid drinking alcohol, smoking, or using recreational drugs. Make sure that we're drinking plenty of water, maintaining a healthy diet, exercising, getting good sleep, washing our hands, taking plenty of vitamins, and most importantly, getting support where we need it. And here I've got photos of a dear, dear friend of mine's memorial service. We set up lots of her favorite things. We have a photo of her urn, and there's a photo of my friends and I with these big red lips that she loved. So thank you so much for learning a little bit about the physiological impacts of grief with me, and please be sure to share with anyone you know who may be grieving.